What I want to talk to you guys today about is one particular project that involves PRRS control on a large scale. And I'll describe for you what I mean by that. But what I want to focus on towards the end of the presentation is reduction of wild-type virus. And I think it's a good segue from JP's work and Dr. Caporto's description as well. But I want to start with a couple premises. Okay, the first premise, when you talk about large-scale or area regional control, we need to talk about methods, plural, and we need to talk about complementary methods. Okay, there is no silver bullet with PRRS, certainly. There's a number of different things that can be used collectively to make progress with PRRS, and so that's why the emphasis on these terms, complementary methods and applied together. The closure, the mass immunization, the pig flow, the biosecurity, all these things, plus some I'm sure I didn't mention, are key to managing PRRS on a large scale. Second premise, and I want to set this premise up with this picture, and I don't know if you guys recognize this person. Reed normally is clean on Monday morning, but after 5 days of working with PRRS, this is what his wife sees when he walks in the door. But here's the second premise. It's not just the methods. There's a high degree, and Bob, I think you've seen this play out in the contrast between Rice and Stevens counties. There's a high degree of cooperation, there's a high degree of coordination, and a high degree of collaboration that is required for anything on this scale to be effective. You can come with the best methods you can imagine, and if you don't have the cooperation, coordination, and collaboration among all the parties that are necessary to make it successful, it's not going to work. Camille sent me that picture, by the way, so, okay. All right, this is going to be a Plan A, Plan B description, because when this project first started, it was started as an elimination project. So I want to go through the Plan A of where the project started. And just a little background on the system. It was 22 sow farms, about 33,000 sows total. There's 12 of these farms in the first area, 10 in a second area. That was about 11 miles away, and I'll show you kind of the layout of that system. A couple of little isolation sites, a bore stud at the second area, a bunch of wean to finish barns at the second area, and then also at a third area that pigs from some of the sow farms were shipped to. 12 nursery barns, 154 finisher barns across both areas, and then one feed mill that was located up in Area A. This is kind of a overall picture of the entire system. Here's Area A, here's Area B, with a mix of sow farms, nurseries, and finishers here. There was a truck wash and an isolation site kind of in this area here. Feed mill was up here, their main office. Down here were some sow farm complexes, a finisher, and a large wean to finish site, and then kind of off the map, you can't see the bore stud, and then a nursery. Area A, this is just a little detail. You can see it's quite a mix of sow nursery finishing, and you can kind of see how it was structured in sow nursery finishing little clusters of sites throughout this Area A. Here was a small isolation over here, and then one sow farm here. Close to that sow farm was a facility they called a gilt breeding unit. This is just the satellite of those sites layout, so you can kind of get a perspective with the pivots here. Distance from Area A to B, about 11 miles. Feed trucks coming this way, and market trailers going through the wash after coming back from delivering pigs from both areas, and semen coming from area B up to area A. So that's some connections between those areas operationally. Area B, 3 sow farms in a complex here, 7 kind of side by side here, with some finishing, large wean to finish, and then off the map again down here is nursery and boar stud a little further down. And this is the sow farms you can kind of see right here, 1, 2, 3, another one here, and then 3 more over here, 1, 2, 3 sow farms here. This was the finishing, and again the stud and the nursery are kind of off the map. Down here, this is the distance, about 6 miles between the sow farms in this cluster and then the large wean to finish sites. Just 2 big long rows of barns, 52 total, 26 in each row. And then this is where the stud nursery and the stud are down in this area, separated by about 2.5 miles. Just some context for this project. These guys had tried depop repop twice, and it had not worked. Their performance was poor. They also did not have confidence in vaccine. But they were willing to try just about anything after their experiences. This is the dendrogram that we started with in that system. This is several years worth of sequencing that when we first started working with them, they showed us and said, well, this is our history on this dendrogram. So that's before we started the project. Our basic approach here was to kind of follow the simple 5-step model that we all intuitively apply when we talk about working with individual farms, with systems. It's what are your goals? Where are you today? What are the risks that are keeping you from your goals, in this case PRRS, or what are your constraints? And it's not necessarily just a risk measurement discussion when you're talking about constraints, but that's a big part of it. And then what is your plan, given your goals, given your constraints, given where you are? And then execute the plan and then measure and monitor. And so when we started this, our intent was the goal of elimination. Our current status was trying to achieve stability. In terms of I'm not patient enough for your computer to read, sorry. The second was, what are the risks? Where would these sites kind of fit in a world of risk measurement scores? And with this kind of context, we thought, all right, well, let's try this. And maybe it's high in the short term, long term. Let's try that. That's what they wanted to do. Now, basic components, when you talk about achieving, maintaining stability, when you talk about elimination, when you talk about preventing introduction, I think most of us would agree that there's just some basic components to doing those things. You're going to load, you're going to close, you're going to keep closed for a period of time, you're going to do something to homogenize immunity, then you're going to start flowing some naive pigs back in and turn the inventory over, reopen and resume flow. If maintaining stability is your goal, some sort of combination of immunization, minimizing exposure, trying to get find a good balance there, and then measuring how good you're doing at that are key components. When it talks about elimination, whether it's depop, repopulation, complete, partial, or flowing in and flowing out, as is the case in a rollover, you're flowing out the bad, sanitizing in between, flowing in the good. Sometimes it's in parallel, sometimes it's end-to-end. But those are the basic components. And then prevention certainly is all about minimizing introduction risk and measuring how successful you are at that. So our goal was to go this way: stabilize, eliminate, prevent. And the elimination steps, and this was back in 2004, we're going to follow these steps: load, close, homogenize, reopen, roll over the herds. and see if we can't get it done. Now, key question, what made us think that this even had a snowball's chance, not in Chicago, but maybe somewhere else warmer, to even work? What we're looking at here is that relative to the vaccine we were targeting using, were quite a variety of viruses we're facing. The closest thing, just using OR5 just for epidemiologic comparative purposes, 8%, but somewhere between 8 and 15, averaging about 13, and there's quite a variety of virus within the system. So, put our thinking hats on, and thought, well, how can we take this from experimentation to a site to a flow to something on this scale? Let's think this through. And thinking it through, it's basically all about four things. What's your plan? What's the right team? And that includes what you're bringing to the table plus what the system has, the methods that you're going to apply, and what's all about the tools. It's all about these four things. And Bob, I want to thank you for that pose. I appreciate you coming in and modeling that for us. I didn't know you had a second career until you. All right, key project elements. Closure, of course. 6 to 7 months was our target. We were shooting for 7 months. So we were going to start looking at opening back up in September. We went through 3 mass vaccinations of sow herds and the pig pipeline. That's all the nursery pigs, all the finishing pigs, all the sows, all the replacement in the developer. Where possible, nursery depopulation was done, but that was not possible, obviously, in that large wean to finish site. And the finishing sites, the nurseries were possible, were done as depopulations and bubble depopulations. And then trying to maximize biosecurity between those two areas that were 11 miles apart because of the feed trucks, market trucks, and semen transport in between. Long-term, some elements that were intended to be built into the approach, parity segregated flow. There was some sow farms that were designated as gilt farms, and then others as mature sow farms for implementing parity segregation. And then area segregation, what I mean by that is that they were trying to make the flow more linear and parallel instead of commingling a whole bunch of pigs and just dump them all in a site, to go from a particular sow farm to a particular set of nursery barns to a particular set of finishing barns. Now, in these sites, that diagrammatically that makes sense, but operationally, you know that this set of 8 barns isn't that far from that set of 8 barns, but they're getting pigs from different sow farms. All you're trying to do is mitigate risk to a degree. You're not trying to make things black and white, separate and perfect, and take it to zero risk. The other things that were done as far as ongoing vaccination, the gilts were done twice before entry, and in theory that happened. In practice, they didn't necessarily maintain what we wanted them to maintain in terms of timing for these gilts coming in. And these were naive gilts from outside the system that came in. All of them were tested for PCR, found negative, and then once they were demonstrated negative on PCR, then we followed through with the vaccination. The sow herds were done 4 times a year. If we saw virus leaking in piglets, some contingent vaccination plans were in place. And then pigs were done twice. Because this was an elimination project, we said let's try a more intensive approach and see what happens, and so they were done twice post-weaning, 30 days apart. Okay, something that made us think, well, geez, we got all these wild viruses here. What gives us any hope that that's going to do any good? And so we had, in, I don't know what it is now, 18 or 20, but at that time there was about 16 studies that our R&D group had done, plus another example with heterologous challenge. And in those studies there was a variety of different challenge viruses. This one obviously is homologous on one study of the studies that was done. These others were heterologous to both the MLV and the ATP vaccines. And this is the data. Lung lesions were the criteria. And in the main, for both vaccines, Ingelvac, MLV, and the ATP, different vaccination to challenge intervals, and then different challenge viruses, significant reduction in terms of lung lesions. And so we said, well, that gives us some hope at least that we can see some value from that. This is the summary of a study that Pat Halber had done and published with 3 different heterologous viruses and the ATP vaccine. This is a 144 virus, a 184 virus, and then this is the 2385 Iowa State virus in terms of non-vaccinate, vaccinate pigs, lung lesions, non-vaccinate, vaccinate pigs, average daily gain. So we said, well, we might expect to see some sort of favorable production impact as well as have a chance at elimination. Another thing that gave us a little hope on elimination is that in that same study, the Halber study, 7 and 14 days post-challenge, PCRs were done, quantitative PCR. And this is the percent of positive pigs in the non-vaccinate group between 7 and 14 days post-challenge. This is the percent positive in the vaccinated group. That study, it was 5 weeks from vaccination to challenge. And then this is the quantitative PCR log values from 7 to 14 days for the vaccinates and the non-vaccinates. So we thought, well, that has the right type of characteristics that may be of some value in this large-scale setting. So we still had our thinking caps on, and we thought, well, maybe this could work. Let's give it a go. When we got there for a June meeting, and remember, we're going to stay closed until September, right? Everybody raised their hands when we went to that meeting, said, yes, we will stay closed till September. And when we got there for this June meeting, it was actually after the meeting was concluding that someone just made an offhanded comment about some gilts in isolation. And I heard that, and I said, well, what gilts would those be? And they said, well, we brought some gilts in, and then the production manager said, the same production manager that said, yes, we will bring in no gilts until September, in June said, well, yeah, we brought some gilts in, we needed them because we had to keep our breedings up. And then we went to lunch. And on the way to lunch, one of the guys in the car with me that came along, he turned to me and looked and he said, I don't know if I needed to run out of the room screaming or shoot myself right there because, you know, what are we going to do now? And I said, well, what can you do? We can walk away and say, well, sorry you didn't follow the protocol, we're out of here. Or we can say, bump in the road, let's deal with it and see if we can make the best of it, which ultimately is what we did. But what's interesting is that naive gilts in an isolation, when they're coming in prematurely into a production flow that there's still virus circulation going on, are like magnets surrounded by metal filings. Okay, you just can't keep it out. They just have this magnetic attraction for PRRS virus, and wherever those metal filings viruses are, they're going to find that magnet. And they did. These gilts got infected, and they got infected with a what I'm calling a wild type 2 virus. It was a virus that the system had seen in the past in their dendrogram. And so over a period of time, that was detected at day 112 of the project. It spread to some other south sites. We detected it at a south site day 195. And then interestingly enough, about a year later, it somehow found its way over to the boar stud. So they ultimately depopulated the stud, but off we went. Ted? Okay. Virus came in here. This is the Area 3 sow farms where we found that virus here. These others are piglet PCRs that we sampled and tested and just tracked over time every 2 weeks for each of the 22 sow farms. And in the first area, we saw virus go away. In the second area, we saw virus start to go away. And then this new virus, this is all that new virus shown up here in the sow farms in these piglets over time. Okay, so back to Reed. What do you do? Sometimes projects don't quite work out the way that you wanted them to. Not quite squeaky clean, and this one certainly wasn't. And so do we give up? And Stefan, I want to thank you for posing for this picture. And for your encouragement not to give up. How many of you guys know Paul Harvey? If you're not from the States, you probably don't know who Paul Harvey is. Paul Harvey is a famous radio announcer that he had a news program, and then he also had kind of a second program that's called The Rest of the Story. And so with Paul Harvey, well, this is the rest of our story. So off we go to Plan B. Plan B, there were some risk factors, and John Kolb compiled this list. And so, John, thanks for that. They didn't have enough isolation and acclimation. We knew that from the get-go. But because of that, and along with that dynamic, I'll call it production anxiety. Okay, you guys know, if you work with production people, you know that they experience from time to time production anxiety. And they just can't help themselves. And in this case, production anxiety led to the premature introduction of naive gilts. And there was still virus circulating. They had some biosecurity issues between their sites that helped things move around still even after starting the project and going through the education process. And I think part of that had its roots in maybe some not quite full commitment. So, 2005 revised objectives. We're not trying elimination anymore. We said, do you want to try this again? Okay, and you promised, right, to keep gilts out long enough. And they said, no, we're just going to have control be our goal now. So we said, all right, that's fine. Increased throughput, that's our goal. Try and get everything stable, keep it stable, and then get your sow herd inventory and parity structure where you want it. So now we're not going this way, we're going this way. And I'm going to skip ahead because I want to get to some of these output results. In 10 of those farms at Area B, this green color, that's wild-type virus 1. There's a few places where we saw vaccine virus. Every place you see a V here, that's where the sow herds were mass vaccinated. Where you see a red with question marks, that's where we couldn't get we had positive PCRs, but we couldn't get sequencing done. But we had 9 consecutive samples here, or samplings 2 weeks apart, that we found no PCR positives in those 10 farms and piglets. And then the second virus showed up in this, set of sow farms, and it kind of spread from there, from this point. So he said, all right, well, let's just play around. I mean, Bob talked about calculations. I like calculations and simulation models. And I said, what's the chances that we really got rid of that virus, that first virus? And so I did some modeling, and I looked at 9 consecutive samplings. What are the chances that at a low prevalence rate that you wouldn't pick up, or what's the likelihood that you would detect a virus that was there at 0.5% in a 9 consecutive sampling period? Okay, and it was fairly high, and so we thought, well, that gives us some good sense of that we might have got rid of that first virus, along with the only thing after that we saw was a second. Then I said, well, what if it was only 0.2%? And I also ran it at 0.1%. But that gave us some confidence that the approach collectively, remember we're talking about a package of methods, had some value. And so then what we did is we said, all right, on these 10 farms, let's look at time to negative, and that was the time to the last detected positive PCR in the piglets. And we were looking at about 21 weeks across those 10 farms, and the 90th percentile at about 25 weeks. Okay. 5 minutes, Bob? 3 minutes? No pressure. Performance-wise, livability, this was the farm's history. These are 3-month periods. Okay, this is livability over 3-month periods. You can see a 6-month period here where the nursery grow finish livability was 81%, 82%. Entire year where it was about 86 or 87%. And this is not, this is in the absence of PCVAD. Okay, there was not PCVAD in this system during this entire time. Okay, so we started our project here. This is the 6-month period of pigs that were in the pipeline at the time when we started. This is 5 quarters in a row thereafter. I'm going to skip a few of these. This is average daily gain in the nursery. These are the impacted pigs during the post-project impact period. You see this spot up here. That's, Scott, you know what that is. That's your nursery depop effect through an 8-week period of time. Each of these points are 8 weeks. This is the finishing average daily gain on the project impact set of closeouts versus the pre. Now, sequencing. Bob, this should go fast because sequencing is kind of a child's game. I don't know if you guys knew that this is how Kurt, you probably went through this training, right? Maybe you may develop the game. I don't know. But this is the sequencing game. And I knew I could do this when I saw that. Ages 3 and up can handle sequencing. Well, I can handle sequencing. So I think. We did a lot of sequencing in this system. We did like 400 sequences over an 18-month period. And you see these nice pretty colors. I'm visual, so I like the colors. And we tried to categorize viruses. Those 3 graphs are just about 1/3 of the charts, or of the table. In the radiodendrogram, vaccine virus, reference viruses, and then the system virus, and then system had 1, 2, and 3 different clusters of virus. This is that virus that came in, that got into those gilt magnets. This is the virus that was predominantly there when we started. These are some oddballs. And then this is a virus that we first found in a finisher. We found different viruses pop up in finishers, but not find them again. This is one particular one that we found in a finisher that then went elsewhere, which I thought was kind of interesting in and of itself. 5 seconds, Bob. I do want to leave you with this graph right here, because one of the things that we did is that we routinely sampled hospital pens of nurseries, growers, finishers. Okay, we did that every 60 days. We would have loved to have done it every couple of weeks and done 10 times more sequencing, but just wasn't in the cards in terms of affordability. But we did do 60 to 70 sequences during each of these periods, and this is the number of field virus sequences that were found. This is the proportion of vaccine virus over those periods. This is the different field viruses. And what we saw is we saw an increasing proportion of field viruses. And this is representing, again, nursery, grower, finisher, pigs all the way throughout these periods in the hospital pens routine that we set up. And then we saw decreasing field virus over that period of time. And so that gave us some reasons, I think, for some optimism that where intensive practices are put in place that are complementary for controlling PRRS, we have the potential to see this type of dynamic and see this type of dynamic on a large scale. Okay, I'll wrap it up here, but I do want to thank some people that were involved in this project. It was an exploratory project. Butch Baker, Greg Hartsook at HMC, Greg's project leader, Brian Hotsey, who was working with BI, Reed, and then Gary Robertson. I want to thank Gary, he was involved as well. Bruce Brinkmeyer, Jens Kehr, Mike Steen, and Scott D. Appreciate all those